This study came about as we wanted to better understand students' subjective experience and sense of belonging at Trent Durham. We wanted to find out student experiences of fitting in and being cared for by the institution, identity factors of university life that contribute to or hinder students' sense of belonging to Trent Durham, and examine students' desired changes. Welcome to Trent Durham S.O.B Stories.
Hey folks, welcome back to our Sense of Belonging stories. My name is Fung, and this month we'll be talking about gender-based violence and sexual violence on and around university campuses. Today I'm joined by Nat, and Nat, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi there, yeah, thank you. So I am a fourth-year social work student. I'm a mature student. I'm an introvert and all-around big old feminist.
All right, so Nat, you currently go to the Durham campus and the Peterborough campus, right?
Yes, so my classes are on the Durham campus, but I have my placement on the Peterborough campus where they have the sexual violence prevention program.
Okay, and you also mentioned that you're a mature student, so before this, were you taking a break or did you go to another school?
Yeah, so before this, I did 2 rounds through college, where I first went for multimedia design, which I hated because I didn't even realize what I was getting myself into, and photography, which I loved, but was unwilling to do all the kinds of photography that make money.
Considering, you've been to college, you go to the Durham campus, you can do the Peterborough campus, how do all these 3 experiences compare to you as a female student?
I think that Trent is definitely much more comfortable environment. I actually feel like both the Durham and Peterborough campuses are much more friendly to women, and it's such a long time ago now that I was at Durham College, but I think I always felt like it was much less friendly. I had a hard time getting male professors to take me seriously, and I think there was maybe even some catcalling that happened.
That's always nice.
Yeah, and it was just not it wasn't terrible, but I feel like Trent's kind of a more safe environment comparatively.
Okay. Do you think that might be because of the programs that we have to offer, or just because the binary gender split is a lot bigger? So there's 60-70% female presenting students at our school compared to male?
Yes, and I also feel like there's more queer visibility at Trent. I don't even remember seeing or knowing, not that there wasn't anyone, but I don't remember seeing a lot of queer folks on the Durham College campus. So, just people being more comfortable and being who they are, and also the Durham campus for Trent is smaller, right? So It's a much more homey environment, in my perspective anyway.
Okay, so you have a role to play in what's called Consent at Trent at the Peterborough campus and the 16 days of activism that recently took place. Could you just explain to me what that is?
Yes, so the sexual violence prevention program on the Trent Peterborough campus is, aptly named Consent at Trent.
Yeah.
And right now I am the placement student for Consent at Trent. And I do a lot of the, public education programming, so information tables. I do a lot of social media for them. So on their Instagram, It's usually me posting right now. And recently, for the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, we ran a social media campaign where we posted actionable items every day for 16 days that people could take into their lives to prevent or end gender-based violence. So that could be anything, like be an active bystander. If you see something happening, step in, because it only takes one person to step up against, someone who's trying to commit an act of sexual violence or gender-based violence to deter them from doing that. But also, like, being someone who supports someone who's trying to be an active bystander, because it can be really scary to stand up to someone, like especially if it's in a workplace where there's a big attitude of sexual harassment or toxic masculinity, someone standing up against a coworker and saying, hey, saying that kind of stuff, using that kind of language isn't okay. Having a person to support you in doing that is always helpful and beneficial.
Mm-hmm. Okay, how does your role in Consent at Trent speak to you personally?
It speaks to me because I am a survivor of gender-based violence and intimate partner violence. It means a lot because when I was young and I was in a situation that wasn't safe, I had no idea what was happening. I had no one to tell me, that this was a thing that happens. And I felt very alone and isolated and ashamed because I couldn't believe I let this happen to me. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have someone out there saying this is normal, or not normal, but this happens and it's not your fault. And, there's ways to get out of this.
Mm-hmm. Was this when you were in college the first time?
It was before I was in college.
Oh, okay.
But then I think I had experiences in college that in different ways mimicked this experience through different partners that I had and different people that I came across there.
Mm-hmm. So currently you play a pretty active role on both the Durham and the Peterborough campuses in your kind of affiliation and your knowledge mm-hmm. about the sexual violence prevention services. How accessible would you consider these services to a student who has not yet needed to reach out to them or haven't yet reached out to them?
I think we try to be pretty accessible. Mm-hmm. We are making a pretty good effort on either campus. I think that with our sexual violence prevention coordinator at Peterborough and our counselor at Durham, they're both doing really good jobs. They're both helping a lot of students, all the students they can. But, Peterborough has a population of 10,000 students, and I'm not quite sure of the population at Durham, but I can imagine it's
1,700.
1,700. So if you take into account that, 1 in 3 women will experience sexual violence in their lifetime, and, it's 1 in 5 or 1 in 7 men, that's a lot. And you put that in the context of a university campus, that's a lot of people who may have had a recent sexual assault or a historical sexual assault needing support, needing to share that. And so, at Peterborough, we have, and at Durham even, there's been a greater effort to educate academic advisors, professors, just more faculty in general on how to deal with disclosures on campus. But then, they're the people who are receiving the disclosures, and they still have to direct those people to our, 2-point people, maybe more point people for the counselors at Peterborough, but the sexual violence prevention coordinator is really the person who knows how to navigate a lot of the services, like going to the hospital, reporting, and our counselor at Durham has similar responsibilities.
Are either of the counselors at Durham specifically for just
sexual violence? No.
Okay.
So, we do have connections with the Durham Rape Crisis Center here, but at Trent, there's really only one sexual violence prevention coordinator that is supposed to cover all of, the population of Trent, which is a lot for one person to be doing. So, I think that's where gaps tend to happen, and that's no fault of the sexual violence prevention coordinator, but I think that Trent really needs to hire another body to share the responsibility. Because I didn't even know that Trent had a sexual violence prevention program or a sexual violence prevention coordinator until I was assigned to this placement.
I didn't know till today, so there's that.
Yeah, I've been going here for 3 years, and I had no idea. And so I think that if we had our own person or a sexual violence prevention coordinator that could provide us with, our own sexual violence prevention programming and educational programming on campus, that it could provide, more opportunities for us to create a culture of consent at the Trent Durham campus. It could provide opportunities for the Peterborough and Durham campuses to have a more uniform message and more opportunities for collaboration. It's important, especially with the residence building that is coming up next year, that will, it's necessary with the residents that there be a sexual violence prevention coordinator because, people are coming to university, they're young, they want to party, and, partying shouldn't be the problem.
Yeah, in first year I actually lived on the Durham College UOIT residence.
What was that like? What was your experience there?
There were parts of it that obviously weren't great because residence in general is never gonna be the prime.
No,
I feel like a lot of people say, yeah, greatest 4 years of your life, and then I went into first year, I was like, this is awful. and that's not saying anything about it's not Durham College or UOIT specifically. It's just going to the new environment, trying to adjust to people who aren't the exact same age as me.
Yeah.
And then realizing that, maybe the guys who wanted to hang out at 9-10 p.m. at night weren't just, they didn't want to just be friends, and I was just that's, I'll see you tomorrow in the morning.
Well, I don't think this is something that's unique to any residents in particular.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a common trend among a lot of university and college residences, across the country, even in, United States.
Yeah.
I feel like this is just the culture of residences, which is a whole entire different conversation.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious to see what other changes besides new classrooms and new buildings and more people is actually going to bring to the Durham campus, whether or not it's going to change the culture at all. Because, classic quote, party schools, which I will not name, those have a certain reputation, and a part of it is because so many students live there.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Trent Durham and might be so different from Trent Peterborough, and why Trent Durham is so different from even UOIT and Durham College, even though we're all within the same 30, I actually have no concept of distance, so 15 kilometers, 20 kilometers, something like that. I know you're, like, a mature student now, so this was, like, some time ago, but when you first started school, did you get any warnings on, like, how to not be assaulted?
Not specifically when I was entering school.
Yeah.
But, just being a woman in this world, there's always the don't go out by yourself, like make sure you have a friend. For a while they thought like pepper spray was a good idea until they realized that, people who are assaulting someone can use that as a weapon against you.
Oh, didn't think of that.
They can take it out of your hand and then use it on you. So, I mean,
Fun.
There's a bunch of ways that women are always taught to take care of themselves, to protect themselves. And, I mean, we do live in a world where sexual violence exists, where any type of violence exists. So I'm not saying people shouldn't do what they can to take care of themselves. But there's a point at which that, becomes irrelevant because you can be doing all the right things and still have somebody, assault you or abuse you. And, it happened to me in a relationship when I was 18 with someone I thought that I could trust. So, yeah. Did you receive any tips on how not to get assaulted when you were coming in?
It wasn't specifically, it was sometime into my first year, and then I met my cousin, and my cousin, it wasn't like not to get assaulted, but it was like to how to not attract men or something like that, or like avoid that gaze. And then I had to break it to her as like, okay, I'm not straight, so which was a whole different conversation. But just that assumption of like young women going to university at the time, and that idea of like, oh, like suddenly letting loose, suddenly being free, and then like the dangers that comes with it. For me, I remember that was a lot to like see. Suddenly I went to like I feel like I was probably pretty sheltered growing up, so it was pretty interesting to suddenly be more independent and like, okay, now I don't want to say fending for myself, but that's the only words I can think of.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, one of the things that's part of what we do at Consent at Trent is try to create a culture of consent, which would mean dispelling a lot of those tips that we just spoke about, because it puts a lot of the responsibility on someone to make sure they don't get assaulted, and none of the responsibility on making sure, people aren't assaulting people.
Yeah.
And so that's why we have a lot of like the information tables, why we're trying to, start conversations around boundaries and respecting boundaries and being an active bystander, because when people understand, what it means to have boundaries and what it means to have boundaries crossed, it allows them to know, like, okay, this is something I've said I don't want, and they're doing it anyway. That's like a boundary crossing. It's disrespectful. Yeah.
All right, Nat. Just as a really quick wrap up, what do you hope from Trent Durham in the future, with the new residence building coming in, with like consent culture and like even with institutional changes?
I hope that Trent Durham will hire, an additional sexual violence prevention coordinator to work, primarily out of the Durham campus. Have that be their campus to get to know the trends, to get to know the population. I know we're very small here, but I don't think it's reasonable to ask one person to be serving, so many people.
Yeah, and such a varying, array of needs as well.
Yeah.
Our counselor currently does, student accessibilities, counseling, and I guess she's the only possible person to turn to for...
Yeah. Both our counselor and our sexual violence prevention coordinator do great work, but I think that we just need more people. And I think when that happens, we'll, hopefully be able to see more events around, Consent at Trent, more programming, more workshops, more stuff that can keep it in students' mind to create a culture of consent. I know right now we're reviewing the transsexual violence policy, and there's some work being done around community responsibility, bars in the community. I know that there's more work being done on what the public education part of that can look like. So hopefully, that together with possibly hiring another person on to sort of share the workload, we could see much more visibility, so survivors on campus know that, someone is thinking about them, that someone is thinking about sexual violence on campus or gender-based violence on campus, because, I didn't even realize it until I realized I had never seen it before, that was what was missing. So that's my hope that that can happen.
Thank you, Nat, so much for being here and sharing with us today.
Thanks for having me on. And, if people are in need of just a little pick-me-up or a little boost of support, you can follow Consent at Trent on Instagram. At Consent at Trent is our Instagram name.
This has been S.O.B Stories. If Nat's sense of belonging spoke to you, you can reach out to Trent Durham Counseling Services through the front desk or reach out to the Durham Rape Crisis Center. To contact us, follow us on Instagram at Trent Durham SOBs or email us at belonging@mytdsa.ca. Have a safe holiday season, folks.